Hello again, welcome to this video showcase of creating a sign inside Blender 2.64. Now we're going to actually create the mesh structure of the object. So let's highlight the window. I'm going to drag the view into desirable view using the middle mouse button. I'm going to snap this into the center of the entire scene, which will represent the entire object in DBPRO. To do that, I'll need to assign a new location for the 3D cursor by pressing the Shift and C key. That will center the cursor in the middle of the scene, and this viewport will view all objects in the scene. I still have the cylinder selected, so I'll press the dot key to highlight to view the cylinder up close. And I'm going to shift that into the center by pressing the Shift and S key on the keyboard, which nicely snaps the selected object or the cursor to selected objects. I'll snap the selected object to cursor with this option here. Now I'm going to increase the height of the pole of the sign. To do that, I could scale by pressing the S key and expanding the size of the object. However, this expands the size of the object data. In Blender, everything is every 3D object is either object data or a mesh. We want to edit the size of the mesh, not the object data. We want the object data to remain at its usual scale. So to do that, we'll enter into edit mode, and to do that we press the tab key on the keyboard. Now I have the mesh selected. I'll press the dot key again so that when I drag with the middle mouse button, the view rotates with the cylinder in the center of the screen. I'll drag the cylinder up by pressing the G key followed by the Z key. Z in Blender refers to the Y-axis in DBPRO, up and down. Now let's see if I've got that on the floor by pressing the 1 key on the numpad. I'll press the 5 key on the numpad to run into orthographic mode. I'll zoom in a little bit and drag it down just a touch, drag it down, press the Z key to align to the up and down axis, let it penetrate the floor a little bit. Now I'll press the Control and 8 key on the numpad to kind of scroll up, and then I'll press the Shift key and the 8 key on the numpad to first I have to get back into perspective mode by pressing numpad 5, and then I'll press the Control and 8 key on the numpad to rotate the view. Zoom out a little bit. I'll select the face at the top with the right mouse button, and I'll drag up by pressing G and dragging the mouse up. I will align it to the center using the Z key to keep it nice and straight. Zoom out a little bit, make it a little bit bigger. Now I wonder how big this object is. Well, we can find out. I'll press tab to enter into object mode, and I'll press the N key on the keyboard to show the transform panel. Here we see that in height, the Z-axis in Blender, Y-axis in DBPRO, is 33 units. Now the system that I'm working with at the moment, the character is currently roughly about 60 to 70 units high. So we want this sign to be a little bit taller than that. So I'll hit in the tab key to go into edit mode and drag this up a little bit more. Also I can make it about there. Okay, I'll press the global button to see the actual Z position of this. It's at 42 at the moment. I'll go a little bit higher by pressing the G key followed by Z. About 75 will do. Tab key to exit edit mode and enter into object mode. There's our pole for the sign. Let's switch over back to solid view so we get constant shading. Now, next step is to create the head of the sign. Okay, to make this a sign, a real sign, let's get into edit mode. I'm going to use this selected top to assign a position for the cursor. I'll press Shift and S, then I'll select Snap Cursor to Selected. Now the cursor is at the top of the pole. Now I'll add a cube by pressing Shift and A. Shift, Mesh, and Cube. Now my cubes are 256 in size by default. Your cubes will be about 1 in size, so I will need to shrink this down. I'll press the dot key to highlight the cube in the center of the view. I'll make it a little bit smaller. I'll work with this kind of size for now. The scale is really small at the moment. I'm going to need to apply the scale so that it returns to its default, which is 1. I do that by pressing Ctrl and A and selecting Apply Scale. Now the scale of this object is 1. Now even if the object was at the high scale and I exported it into the DirectX format and loaded it in the DBPRO engine, it would still be the correct size. Everything will still be fine, but it's best to keep the scale at the default of 1 within Blender to work best with mesh operations, modifiers and other activities taking place in the editor. Let's make the screen a little bit bigger so I can concentrate on what I'm doing a little bit better. Now I'll press the Tab key. I'm going to work on a directional sign, so I'm going to make it point outwards. To do this, I will remove the top face. I'll select it with the right mouse button and I'll press the X key, which is delete. You can also press the delete key on the keyboard, but I find the X key is closer to where my finger is, so I'll just use the X key and press F for faces, so that the 4 vertices at the 4 corners are still kept, only the face is removed, the 2 polygons. Now we need to mirror image this cube. Let's get rid of these panels by pressing T and N. Now make this bigger, press this little guy over here and select the mirror modifier. Now we need to mirror it upwards, so we're going to select the Z axis and disable the X axis. Now I'm going to select the object and let's work with the edges. I'll press Ctrl Tab and select Edge Mode, which you can also select using the button down here. Edge Mode, I'll press the Alt key and select the edge with the right mouse button. This selects the edge in a loop all the way around the object, which is pretty nice for selecting things nice and easily, rather than pressing Shift and selecting them one by one. You can just press the right mouse button with the Alt key held down. Now we know that the object is added right at the center of the 3D cursor, so all I need to do is reduce the height of this edge loop. So let's do this. Press G, Z and scroll down. As you can see, we have our mirror image in full effect. Now we need to get this right at the height of the cursor. My way of doing this is simply just to press the N key and copy the height of the 3D cursor with the Ctrl and C key with the value highlighted. In global transform mode, I'll directly type in or paste in the height of the position of the 3D cursor and press enter. Now I know the edges meet right at the center right there, and we'll have a look in wireframe mode and have a look at the result. switch back over into solid mode. Now for the pointy edge, the arrow edge, in fact I'm gonna have it dip in from the back and dip out from the front. I'll use the y-axis, the positive y-axis, since the green arrow is pointing in the y direction. In edit mode I'll select the back vertex and the front vertex, and I will move the edges rather this way, about there. It doesn't have to be exact, this isn't precision modeling. I'll select the face selection mode. I'll select these two faces. Oop. No need to select the face at the top because that is a mirror image that does not exist in mesh space. That is a modifier effect. So let's press G with only one face selected, G, and I'll hold the Y, I'll press the Y key and hold the mouse and drag it this way like that. That's fine. That's about the length of the sign. Let's give a bit more space for a bit more text to be displayed on it. Now I will select all of the faces and I will drag this to the left a bit more from this viewport. I'll drag down in object mode so that we move the mesh and its deformed modifier counterpart. Okay, that looks about right. Now the thickness, I'll simply scale on the x-axis. In fact, I'll type this scale in. I'll scale it down to 1/4 of its size by pressing 0.25, and I'll press enter to confirm the command. Next we will move the object in object mode to the side by pressing the X key and dragging it roughly on the edge. No need to perfect the positioning and make it look completely perfect. Now I'll press tab mode and we need to make this into two objects. I need one object to hold one texture and another object to hold another texture. Before I do that, I think I will apply the modifier so that this becomes a one complete mesh. Press the apply button in the modifier. Now the mesh is singular. I will select the back faces and press the P key on the keyboard to bring up the separate menu. I'll separate the selection. Now Blender has created a new object called cube.001, which I will rename to reverse of sine. I will name the cube just simply sine, and there we have it. I think that will suffice. We just need to place some text up here and export it into the engine. In the next tutorial I'll have some text created, and what I'll show you is actually how to apply the texture to the mesh using UV coordinates within the Blender program.